Welcome to Switching On Electrified Skills, the podcast that sparks your curiosity and ignites your passion for a career in electrification. I'm Deepak Farmer. Join me on this electrifying adventure where I connect you with industry leaders, visionary education providers, and pioneers driving the electric revolution. Discover the world of skills, jobs, and community, gaining actionable insights, inspiring stories, and the latest developments. Now for a quick announcement, and listeners, this isn't an announcement you want to miss. Switching On Electrified Skills is giving away cutting-edge electric bikes from our top UK manufacturer, EBCO e-bikes. This exciting giveaway is going to run from 19th of December 2023 to 26th of March 2024. Entering to win is simple. Subscribe to the ERS Hub YouTube channel and listen to any podcast episode. Hit the like button and drop a comment on your favorite podcast episode, sharing what you enjoyed most about the episode and why you want an e-bike. And subscribe to our newsletter. For all the details, hurry and head over to the episode description on your preferred podcast platform to find the rules and the terms and conditions. Please take a look at the privacy notice. All participants must be 18 and over to enter and reside in the UK. Participants will be selected by me and my team. Entry is free with a limited one entry per person. Good luck to you all. Today I'm joined by my very good colleague and friend, Dr. James Shuttleworth. And he is going to be talking to us about some of the journeys that we've been on over the last 5-6 years around developing good knowledge and expertise in skills gaps and how we address them. So thank you, Dr. James Shuttleworth, for joining us today. And firstly, if you want to introduce yourself, your background is in computer science, obviously, but I would love to know a little bit more about before we met, right? What's your journey been up until 2018?
Oh, up until 2018. As you say, computer scientist. So background very much in academia, generally on the nerdier end of the spectrum. So, lots of programming, low-level stuff. Always had, an interest in technology, but really from that kind of what possibilities are there, how can you make things do something new and interesting. I developed the games technology courses and the cybersecurity courses at Coventry University, so very much that sort of cutting edge, what can we do, how can we do things that people want, or how can we give people new things to do with technology. The bit between sort of those kind of activities and when we started working together really was around looking at skills that are required in industry, how people get hold of those. So obviously as a university we look a lot at what's going to be the demand for a workforce in the future, and you have kind of limited understanding of that because things change so quickly. So when the Institute of Coding project started and we started working together, that led really nicely into that opportunity to really explore in a lot more depth in a way that perhaps we couldn't have done before, how people in industry are looking towards the future, how they get skills, whether that's through training people or acquiring people, and what the pipeline really needed to become to get people with the right skills into the right place, 5-10 years down the line.
Absolutely. I think when we first started this and we crossed paths, it's an unusual thing to find. Academia, working with commercialization and all this sort of stuff. But really what brought it together was the Institute of Coding project, which was designed to look at those skills gaps. And from a university's perspective, such an important task in trying to establish the demand and the alignment to what industry was requiring. And I think that's where really we started getting into the weeds of this. We started off with an agenda to start supporting skills gap. The question was, where do we start? How do we actually, start doing that from the get-go? And I think that a lot of the early stage or the first year of this was very much about us trying to absorb information, trying to take it from industry and trying to understand the space. Because although you had the technical background, about the computer science elements, and that is very much linked to all the skills that are in demand at the time and have grown since, like AI, data science, blockchain, whatever that might be. But the fact was that we knew that there was a digital gap. We just needed to understand what kind of gap was, why it was there, and why it was forming, and why it was getting bigger, and how we were going to stop that from happening as a trajectory of a gap increasing as we move into more industries. But the fact is that digital cuts across everything. So we quickly realized that, there was not just about technical skills. there was a whole load of things that was going on around technical skills development that needed to also be addressed. In the first year that we worked together, what was your experiences and what were you seeing in terms of the problem and the things that we were coming up against, the challenges, you could say, in terms of trying to say, well, how do we do this?
Well, I think it all really started, the Institute of Coding itself was set up almost in response to the Shadbolt review.
Yeah.
And that was a government report that said essentially computer science departments across the country are not producing the right computer scientists because industry is desperate for people with digital skills and they just can't get them. And so, we had that as a target, solve this problem, it's a huge problem, go ahead and solve it. But the first bits of work that we did really sort of highlighted that the problem wasn't computer science graduates, because actually at pretty much any university in the UK, computer science graduates leave, they go and get jobs, they do very well. The problem was that everyone else needed those skills as well. So the technology, the sort of understanding of how it can be applied. We talk a lot about digital transformation in various places, but it's not just a thing that's being done. It also needs to be driven by people in whether it's automotive, whether it's health, or it's construction, seeing opportunities and being able to do something with it. So it couldn't just be one CTO sitting at the top and deciding. The whole workforce needed a different set of skills, and I think that's probably the biggest thing that we not solved but began to understand, was that our job wasn't really to change how we were doing computer science, but to change how other people in other courses, in other training programs, people already in work, picked up those really essential skills. So we talked to lots of industries. In some places it's digital transformation is in the early stages. So we talk to, let's say, people in construction, and it's as simple as we're moving from paper-based processes to digital processes. But that automatically means you've got a whole workforce that now needs to understand not just how to fill in a form, but to understand, what does it mean for it to be on the cloud, or how do I communicate with someone, electronically? How do I track versions of things? And it sounds simple, but actually you can't just train someone on the surface level. You need to understand more of what's going on. And it impacts probably most obviously things like cybersecurity, because as you go through digital transformation in any sector, it leads to more digital systems, more risk. There's value there for attackers and things, and every person needs to understand. But also opportunity. So if you're exposed to lots of digital systems and don't know how they work, you're just following a process. For many people, it's not any different to the paper-based process. They don't really see underneath. So we started to look at, well, what are the skills that people need to have outside of computer science, as a sector, and in other areas. And you realise that yes, digital is a big part of that, but the same thing applies to any kind of transformative technology. So whether it's electrification, which obviously we're very much into it at the moment, or it's about green technology, or it's about application of certain technologies in supply chain tracking or whatever. They all have a similar kind of pattern. You have this sudden need for this move. Someone starts realizing the opportunities. Everyone needs to catch up. How do you get those skills? You can maybe see a competitor sort of adopting things. How do you move with the times? And also you have born digital companies in almost every sector as well that are really pushing those boundaries. You look at like the obvious ones like Uber and Amazon and people like that have transformed their sector because they've come in as a born digital company, all of that skill, all of that understanding, and left a lot of the traditional companies behind, and they're all trying to play catch up. So I would say that's probably the biggest thing, is to understand that it was not just about getting the tech people to be even better at tech. It's about making sure that tech is seen as like a fundamental set of skills, and it might be different across different sectors. Blockchain is really important, for lots of things, but it might not be important in construction. But using drones, using sort of VR and that kind of stuff is actually really big in that sector, but not so much in finance, for example. So understanding what that skills mix is, where people are going with it, I think that was probably our biggest thing. And if you remember, we quite quickly moved towards trying to understand what those gaps were, what the technology gaps Absolutely. In those other sectors. So
and one thing I can say, working with James Shuttleworth of 2018, right? I think that one of the things that I found was that I could see things that were happening in the sectors and how B2B worked in terms of, trying to support different digital skills and transformation. But the one thing I found with yourself was your computer science background put everything down to logic. It was your way of working things out, your way of looking at things from a different perspective, and making sure that you had logic to everything that you were doing. And I think that comes back to your computer science background, that everything became a way of understanding it in a process rather than it being just text on a paper. It was, why is this connected to this, and why is this happening to this? It was always a logical way of looking at it, and I found that quite synergized with the way I think that we needed to approach it, as opposed to how we could have ended up approaching it. How do you feel about that side of it in terms of your computer science background? What skills there do you think became very relevant when we started trying to take on this humongous task?
Well, I think it definitely helps to have that tech background, and the sort of computer science background, because you can see the opportunities. You know where AI is going to actually be useful, or distributed ledger technology might actually work and how it functions. And we've had lots of projects along the way where that sort of fundamental stuff is important. But I think you're right, that systems thinking approach has been really critical, and it's really helped us, I think, to look for longer term solutions rather than just patching something over, or a palliative sort of fix for whatever's currently a problem, and build things that are reusable, robust, repeatable, things that we can move from sector to sector. Because like I said earlier, we do have lots of occasions where we hear from one sector a set of problems, and you change a few words and it's the same thing you hear from another. So whether it's automotive or healthcare or construction or whatever it happens to be, you change the skills, or you change the role names, or you change the companies, but the pattern of it stays the same. And so I think that you're right, that systems thinking and that kind of approach probably has helped us a lot to build the facilities rather than just these one-off interventions.
Absolutely. And I think that prior to this, the natural course of action that we found, right, was that you'd have to base it on expertise of individuals who then, one individual to another, for example, a consultant working in this space looking at digital transformation compared to another consultant would have very different outcomes. Why? Because it was based on experience. And having that sort of logical thinking approach, systems engineering sort of idea, what we set out to do very quickly was to know that these things that we're going to do need to be scalable, and they need to have been driven by what is very important, I think, in all of this, is gathering of that data, right? And using that data, or wielding it so that we can really make use of it. We started very quickly documenting, right, things that we were finding were challenges. Talking to industry, we would say, what sort of things do you need? What's your problems? All these sort of things. But we wanted to take that information, not based on just thought, but we wanted to actually find the data out. We wanted to get in the nooks of things. We wanted to get into the organizations and start putting together a logical form of collecting that data. I think that's where our journey really got entwined in terms of what we were going to carry on to do later on in the coming years. Because where we are today, as part of this, we're talking about the self-assessment tool, right? And we're talking about our data-driven pathways tool that we've created that helps organizations in terms of workforce development. But that journey started with the idea that, how do we get that information even, right? And when I came to you with that problem all those years back, when I said, hold on a second, look, I've been in a meeting and people just keep talking about things and people keep speaking about digital transformation, and all we're seeing all the time is products flying here and there. No one really knows what impact. It's almost like guesswork, right? We can't guarantee or can't even give a structure to whether this is going to have an impact for that business or not. How did you feel when I came to you with that problem? What was your thinking in those early stages of how we were going to try to bring this together?
I think the natural reaction, as someone coming from a research and academic background, was, where's the data? And like in lots of places, it doesn't really exist. So, how do we get it? How do we make sure it's robust? How do we make sure it's something that we can draw conclusions from that are not shaky? So, and of course that requires a lot of data. one or two items isn't enough. So the problem then for me became, how do we understand it? How do we, collect that data? How do we analyze it? And the first iterations of what became, the digital tools that we use now really were for us, they were for us to understand how things worked, and for us to, have an idea of how we can compare company A to company B, or sector A to sector B, or even country to country, because there are data sets, there's lots of publications, but they're not really comparable because they're all built in a different way, they'll use a different methodology, and the value of that comparison is quite low then. So when we started with the process and how we're going to do it, it really was for our benefit, so that we could be in a better position to support, to build products and services, to advise, or what have you. It didn't take long for that to be seen by partners that we were working with, and the sort of desperate look in people's eyes when they realise that you've got a method to understand what skills their workforce has, what skills their workforce needs, and what skills the rest of the sector has and needs. It was early on, but there was definitely a point where the sort of quite a few light bulbs over different heads went off. This is something that people need. This is something that we can provide. It's been a core of things we've done now for quite a few years, as a way to understand things, to give data back to people, to to actually drive action as well. So having a way to systematically decide, actually these people here are in need of these kinds of technologies, and currently they're at a certain level, and this is how you get them to the next level. So it's not just identifying a problem, it's also finding some route through to the right solution. That's not one size fits all. So when we do these analyses, a good example is HR, for example. We're looking at digital transformation or any kind of technology application. People don't really think about HR, but if you have a thorough process that can be adjusted to suit different roles like we do now, you can actually do a lot of good work by making sure that HR has the right understanding. So it might be more contextual, rather than practical, but we can analyse that. We can see where they are, because these are the people that are going to have to hire people. Yep. They're going to write job adverts. That even as simple as, where do you advertise for people with tech skills, could be very different to how you were advertising when you had like a completely analog process. Say manufacturing or something like that. You advertise in a certain set of places. If you now need someone with data science, where do you go? What do you understand about that? If someone comes in for interview, or you see a CV and it talks about all their amazing skills, do you know the difference between someone that has a 6 months experience using a word processor and a spreadsheet versus someone that can do data science? Really sort of look and analyze the data properly and give you good outputs. So that, I think, was a really big change for us, was that ability to look across multiple areas. And I think, it's grown from there.
Absolutely. I think that, in terms of a journey, when we first started, those first few years where we just went really deep into understanding how skills are being, grown, or, the gaps are acting in terms of, a growing market, was critical, because we didn't realize it at the time that we were about to go on a journey to start automating tools and start building tools. We'd never really thought about that. All we were thinking about was, how do we know how to help people, help the industries, and help people get careers. But the fact that we had developed such a deep understanding, which was very much around the logics and the understanding of, and looking at the dynamics of the market, and really understanding that, almost fine tuning it, and bringing our methods, it became something that we realized that every industry that we were speaking to suddenly went, we want to use it. Right, we want to use that now. We don't want to base it on what we're saying. Come into our organization and tell us how we should be, transforming our agenda to meet our strategic needs for being more digital in 5 or 6 years' time. And at that point, we started to then develop. So for the context of everyone and all the listeners here, I think it's important that we frame where we are now, right? And a little bit about what the self-assessment tool is. Then we can sort of work back in terms of our journey. But what is the self-assessment tool? And more importantly, if we talk about it outside of the context of electrification, and in terms of, what does a self-assessment allow people to do? I would love to hear about that.
Well, it's probably best to step back even further, really, and talk about the data-driven capability pathways tool,
yes,
more broadly. So this is It's essentially a set of processes that are supported by digital tools that we use when we make these analyses of workforce capability. It essentially looks at three key areas, which is the confidence of the workforce, which is really important. Their sort of application capability. So, given any tech, whether it's blockchain, drones, electrification, winding, whatever it happens to be, can they do it? And at what kind of level? And the other one is about context. So understanding, like how to select the right option. You might not be building things in house. You might be buying in components, but you also then need to know what's the market like. Who provides good quality service? How do you do acceptance testing on things? So there's a lot of things that are not necessarily specifically application, but fit around it. So those three more abstract areas, we can then apply that analysis to different topics. So it might be that you look at the classic ones that we worked with initially, all around digital skills, things like cloud computing, blockchain, programming, so various levels, drones, and I think we had a bit on cryptography. There are quite a few different things that we could look at. And we work with an organisation. Firstly, we select the set of technologies that's appropriate, and that comes from what they tell us. So what they're looking at, what's their sort of signposting and forecasting looking like. What are they interested in? We also do a lot of work on the sector and what everyone else is doing, where it's going. There are good reports out there for most sectors on what the future is going to look like. So this is more about trying to help them build a roadmap to that future. So we look at what those sets of things are, and we get that down to perhaps 5 or 6 key areas that they need to understand. Once we've done that, we then look at the level. So there's clearly going to be a big difference in the sort of level of technology that's used in one sector compared to another, or even between organisations, depending on what they're doing. And we can pin that to the right kind of level, not just for that organisation, but for that organisation in that sector with the sort of the competitors that they've got and their plans. And then going the other way, more fine-grained, within the organisation, what different roles need. So that can be, what does HR need? What does procurement need? What do people on the shop floor need? What do people in the warehouse staff need? And we can move those levels up and down to be appropriate. So someone that's doing brilliantly and works in, let's take an extreme example, part of the cleaning staff, is not going to be having the same kind of capabilities as someone that's in a technical team. But we can work out what each of them need to be at. So their levels, the target that they should be hitting is appropriate for them in their organisation, in their sector.
They're all those things that you just mentioned is so in line with how deep you have to go, right,
Yes.
to be able to really move an organisation forward. There's a huge learning that we learned very early on that, yes, it was about, digital transformation, but it was always, it might be the IT department that needs to do that, or the operationals team that do that.
Yeah.
And you're talking about, HR and cleaners and marketing and finance. Why is that important?
Well, we've given some examples already, why HR need to understand the things that they're doing. If you look at, say procurement, they're going to be purchasing these things. They need to understand what's there. Even just drawing up contracts and things, or looking at warranty. If you don't know the tech, you don't know what's an appropriate length of time before something needs servicing or is likely to break, or what its typical failure modes are and what goes into these agreements. It becomes really difficult, and then their expertise, which is around that procurement or legal or whatever it is stumped a little bit by the lack of technical knowledge. So there's a level that they need to get to. So you have to break those things down, work out where it is. The cleaning example, is another good one. You might think, that's surely not important, but imagine, anywhere that does any kind of manufacture, has machinery, has things, do you just say don't touch the big machines, or do you have people that actually understand, what is rubbish to be thrown away, what is actually something that's dropped that's really important, when is it safe to approach the machine, and cybersecurity is a really good one, cleaners, because we have lots of, many of them probably apocryphal, but stories of the cleaner unplugging the server room to plug in the vacuum cleaner, and those kinds of things. So it is about those things, and it's not huge amounts of technical understanding that are needed in all areas, but it's about knowing what level is appropriate,
what they need to know
exactly
in terms of balance,
and it's not just the people either. So once we've got that kind of understanding of where things should be or could be, because we look beyond the basics and what would you need to be a leader in this area as an organisation. We also look at the infrastructure. So do you have things in place to support innovation around the technologies that you're interested in? So if someone has an idea, do they know where to take it to? Do you have a stage gate process? Do you have even simple things like do you have the right understanding in management to spot when someone is good at what they're doing and maybe would be ideal for trying something out or bringing in? So there's a lot that goes into that setup, and then once you've got that, we can then start sort of doing the analysis, and the way that works is primarily through talking to people. So we have a fairly conversational way of doing it in a really big full assessment of a workforce. We don't like to put people on the spot. We don't want it to look like an exam that you can fail. So we have a system that prompts us, or whoever's doing the assessment, with the right questions. And then behind the scenes, we can work out, how well that's answered. Is this someone that's sort of hitting the maximum level? Do you sort of slow down or stop the questioning at a certain point on a certain topic, or do you extend it further and see how far they can go? The idea is, and it works quite well, is that no one feels like they walk out of it being asked insanely difficult questions that they would never be able to answer and have the confidence knocked. And where those questions start and end, again, depends on the role, the department, and all of that, what we call naturalisation that we go through to get those things right. And that gives us a lot of data across sites and departments as an organisation that we can pull together. But we also send out anonymous questionnaires that check on confidence. So one of the things that we've seen over and over again in multiple sectors is that people's confidence and their capability don't always match up. Probably half the time they do, but it's half the time they don't. And that can be either way around. We've had lots of instances where people are very confident but actually don't realise what they don't know, and that's a really useful thing to be able to give back. We don't do it with named individuals. It's more about how is that unit doing, or how's that site doing, or across the entire organisation. But that gives you some idea of where it's not just about this person needs training, but perhaps this person needs to see the horizons a bit further. There's more out there. There are things they're maybe not aware of. They might not need much of a nudge to be interested and excited and look into it. But if they're not aware of it, then they don't see it. And conversely, you find lots of people who are, going doing job A and have the skills for, a better job, bigger job, more technically focused, or more managerial, but don't realise what they're sitting on. Don't realise that they've actually got those capabilities. Lots of people are using computers outside of work, for example, or they're interested in technology outside of work, and it's not always seen in the workplace. There's not really any kind of other assessment that does a sort of trawl and says who's actually got skills that we don't currently recruit for or haven't previously, and how can we make use of that. And these kinds of assessments really help to spot where there's a gap between confidence and actual capability. So all that gets pooled. Like I said earlier, we have those three key metrics. So what's the confidence level like? How are people in terms of applying technology or concepts, and how people are sort of understanding the context of it. And then we can give a really good overview of an organisation, and we can also start breaking that down. So if it's somewhere that's got multiple sites, we can break down by site, so you can look across different places and down to departments, or you can cut the other way and look at roles. So you might have a technical team on multiple sites. You can look across the entire organisation's technical teams by looking at the roles, and that's always been a bit of an eye opener for people to realise where skills are, and especially compared to confidence. It's been really popular as well with people that are looking for like piloting new things. So if you've got a large organisation with multiple sites, or you've got different areas that things might be applied in, knowing where's right now going to be a good home for a pilot study on we're going to try this tech out is really important. If you want it to work, you need to make sure it's got the right people. So that's the analysis part of what we do. And then traditionally we would then, once we have that data, we can give good signposting. So these groups of people are at this level. you really want them to be a couple of levels above that, to be sort of competing with the rest of the sector. And because we know where they are, where they need to be, we can also then start to signpost people to, and these are the training opportunities, education opportunities, or even sometimes just information. Go and read this report, have a look at the stuff that's in there, because it'll help you apply the skills you've already got. We have lots of things that can fit onto that. The far more nuanced. So things like Frontier Tech, which is a way to build really customized programs for organizations where every person can essentially have their own customized program that suits them, their sector, their role. But even just the sort of standard signposting is useful.
What it really aligns to, and what you just said there, is a thing to pick up on, that the way people learn now has changed. And, the tailored pathways that people demand, and especially organizations demand for their workforces, right, has extremely become a need to be more flexible. And, as we, do these analyses and we understand the data, the one thing that separates it from anything else in the sector is that we use the data to pinpoint somebody's starting point, and then focus on the point which they want to reach as an organization. And by doing those two, marking those 2 points, we're able to tailor the journey in between, or the trajectory of transformation. But more importantly, we know that digital transformation happens in multiple different sectors. We know that most of that is consultancy based. So normally it's because what sets this apart, right, compared to what's available to businesses now?
There are a few things. I think one of them, and the biggest one, is that it's repeatable. So, once you've done this once, you have your baseline. You're going to look at training opportunities, whatever you want to do, whether it's for individuals or for entire departments or company wide, whatever it is. How do you know that's had an effect? How do you know that this is doing something? Was that good money? Do you want to continue with that program? Do you want to just stop there? So you can do this again. It's a robust and repeatable process, and that gives you that second data point. I think that's one of the biggest things. We had quite a few people. I think this is something that surprised us at first. Was, for example, the apprenticeships. People paying the apprenticeship levy, that could access that for training, and rather than make use of it and put people onto apprenticeships, because they weren't sure which one they needed, what was the appropriate one to go with, they just saw it as a tax and would just, rather than waste time, because that's, money, time is money, is the old aphorism, but put people into a program not knowing that you're going to get any value out of it is actually just costing you on top. So rather than, throw good money after bad, they would just ignore it, pay the 5%, that's it, just continue. And these kinds of things really help you to spot that. So be able to test on the other side, did that work? Has that actually, say at site A, did that training program actually lead to a measurable difference in capability? It did. Brilliant. Let's apply it, more widely. So I think that's the first thing. It's about that robustness. The other thing is just thoroughness. If you look at sort of traditional methods for this kind of thing, they're very much sort of on the outside, desk-based processes. So you look in, you might look at infrastructure, you might do a few interviews, but it's
very opinion-based.
It
right?
is very, I think that's it. The structured nature of it.
You said important words like benchmarking, sector naturalization, data collecting, right, and then moving that into what does that mean in terms of educational structure? Why are those things so important compared to what has been happening currently?
Well, I mean, again, coming from a research background, it's absolutely critical that you set this stuff up in advance. You don't go in and interview people and then try and work out what that means. You set that up in advance. You look at what is required, what is the right level, and then you assess against that, so we know what kind of questions we need to ask, we know what kind of level we expect people to get to, and even down to, what triggers suggesting certain pathways, like, this course or that training opportunity. Those things can be built in advance and pull in research, pull in, the experience of the people inside the organisation, understanding what they want. Setting those things up before you start doing those interviews means that you're not then biased when you go in and talk to people. You can get that data, and you've got a robust method to get those things out. And that's what I mean by this sort of traditionally having someone come in to look at a workforce as a consultant is someone from the outside. He doesn't have enough of that internal stuff. And the other thing is that if you have consultants doing things, you have a lot of staff and a small sample generally that's spoken to without that robust process. Whereas with something like DCP, you can go for huge numbers. You can really automate how that's done repeatably, so that you can make those comparisons. You can get a really good snapshot, and I think that's a big part
And that
of it.
saves money, right?
Oh, of course.
Effectively, from a business point of view, right, it saves money because what you're doing is you're not making mistakes, right? You're not misunderstanding, right, what your impact is going to be, right? You're developing your workforce with a tangible expectation of the impact, right? What you said about investment into pilots. Pilots are all good and well if you buy machinery, but you need people to be able to do the innovation. And if you haven't got the right team, then you've just wasted a lot of money in very expensive equipment that's going to be used in the old ways. So we learned all that. Now, as part of this, right, we started to look at this, and we realized it became very popular, right? Everyone wanted to use the DCP methodology. Businesses wanted to use it, and it's a very valuable thing. But we came across an obstacle, and that obstacle basically was trying to make everybody happy, because everybody wanted it and there was only a limited amount of things we could do. So that's where I think your amazing expertise in computer science definitely came in, because then it became about more is how do we scale and automate the logic that needed to go into that. And I've seen some serious amounts of logic diagrams and all this sort of things, how they fit together. But what was that like? Tell me how you went about doing that.
Well, again, the real kickoff for this was we were doing a lot of these, and it required a lot of understanding of the process, and it's big, like the way it all fits together, the things that you need to understand. It's a detailed process to set up. It looks like nice and smooth when it's applied, but the amount of understanding that you need in the people that are applying it is huge. And we can do it, not a problem. But trying to get dozens and dozens of people to do it, is a really big task. But we also realised that we could systematise a lot of that. So the process that you follow, how things work, the order that you do things, how you enter the data, what you need to collect, we can capture a lot of that process stuff in digital systems. So we started firstly automating a lot of things for ourselves. So we have particular kinds of diagrams and particular sort of statistics that we work with that capture this and express it in a way that's either very visual, so people can make comparisons really quickly between departments, or slightly more nuanced than just the average score is this, but the average score might be 6 or 7, say, on a scale, up to 9, but you might have people in there that are scoring 1s and others are scoring 9. So capturing that in a way that works for people to understand quickly is quite tricksy. But these are really easy to automate. So we started building tools quite early because we needed them, and we wanted to speed up our process and make it as robust as possible. The more you automate, the less chance you've got for human error, for example. And it was then a kind of a natural step to think about how do we make this so that we can bring people in. So, we can now have a system now that allows third parties to use the system. We can train people to use it. It's not too difficult to understand the system and how it applies. And then they've got access to all of that thinking, all of that sort of systematized analysis, and sort of how it produces outcomes, the signposting. They're all structured so that they're applied correctly and appropriately. And trying to do that while also making it totally configurable so that it works across multiple levels, multiple sectors, that the naturalization process isn't lost, that all that sort of more academic stuff still has a place in it, was definitely an interesting challenge. I thoroughly enjoyed it because it was quite a complicated problem. But and you're right, making everyone happy, I think, is the thing. So we can apply it more. We can
more people can utilize it.
More people can.
We can get it out into the market and take advantage of it. But also it's about sharing information, because what we found over and over again is the knowledge sits in selected places. But the truth is, if we're going to make any dents in terms of career progression or skills development, then it's those people who are making those dreams that need to know where they are.
Yes.
Right.
And that I think is when you said, like, making everyone happy. So the one thing that we talked about earlier about training and individuals, that does make people happy. There's lots of research says that people who have investment in their capability or their skills by their employer are much happier. It helps people stay, stops staff churn. Obviously, it's good for the organisation to have increasing skills in the workforce, but the individuals themselves generally are happier if they feel like someone's investing in them. They're not getting left behind. They're not suddenly going to be obsolete. As things go through this kind of change, and that's when we started to realise that there is another way to look at this. That individuals are also concerned with their development, what they're doing, and it can be as simple as how do I fit into the workforce that where I am now? Could I move into a different position, or someone new to a sector, maybe fresh graduate or someone starting out, looking at job descriptions, looking at the kind of things, wondering what does that actually mean. It says you need 5 years experience of X, but what would someone with 5 years experience actually have? Or entry level roles, which one of these things am I good at? I only know I know my degree results, but practically what does that mean? What's the application of that like? So the self-assessment tools came out of that. So being able to help an individual navigate their way through training opportunities, through career opportunities. Same kind of process. Obviously, we don't assign someone to every single person that wants to use a tool to sit in front of them and ask them the question. So we've automated quite a lot of that process. Still takes into account their confidence. So we start off with how do you feel about these things, and then we can help them compare that later to how they actually score. But we've then also got for individual assessments like that, and through self-assessment, a way to signpost people to things. So the way we're using in the hub is a really good example, because at the end of this, we can say, this is how you scored, this is how you did, this is where you probably should be for the kind of role that you selected that you're interested in, and maybe they do really well on them, and then it can signpost them to the kind of career opportunities that we have on the site that require that level of expertise in the technologies and topics that they've been assessed on. And conversely, if there are any areas where they're a bit weaker, we can then identify what on the site we can point them to about development. So it could be courses, could be information, training, whatever it happens to be. And that's what's great about working on this with the hub is like a central location for things across the entire country. It's jobs across the country, courses across the country, CPD across the country. And because we've built it with the same kind of principles that we've applied to all of those other things we've talked about, it's about data, it's about being systematized, it's about making sure that it's got longevity, that this is going to serve people for a long time. It has all of that capability to say, well, these are the jobs in this area that you might be interested in that require a certain set of skills, or these are the training courses that deliver on these specific sets of skills. And so they work really well together. But it doesn't have to be tied to the RS Hub. I mean, we use the tool in other places. It can be used, for people looking at recruitment, to understand, which roles people might be best suited for, or even not necessarily a screening, or you could, but you can even use it to help people understand whether they should apply for a job. There's lots and lots of studies that show that some people will look at a job advert and let's say they've got half of the skills listed and they will go, brilliant, I'm perfect for that. I've got half of those, I'm ideal. And someone else will look at it with half of those skills and go, nah, it's not for me. I've only got half of those skills.
And those are the people that we want to attract, right? So
they are.
There's so many people out there that have transferable skills. And this tool, the self-assessment tool, was critical for them to be able to put themselves in a position, right, to be able to understand what steps they need to take.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter if they haven't got a technical background. It didn't matter all of that because we wanted to address everyone.
Yeah.
And I think that's where the real usefulness came from it, right, from a self-assessment point of view, but also from the data-driven capabilities pathway, the DCP. Now that's for more mass application in organizations. Right?
Yeah, so DCP looks from essentially the kind of top down. Here's the organization. How do we sort of improve the skills that are in the workforce generally? And the self-assessment tool, same kind of process, but the other way around. As an individual, how do I work on myself? How do I identify what I might learn, or if I did take this course, what could I do with it? What kind of jobs are out there? What am I good at?
And it comes down to, both of those elements, whether you're going from top down or in self-assessment point of view, that what's happening or the amazing stuff that you see happening in the background, right, or the back end as we refer to it, right, is that smart analytical process of change where you're using data in a very modern, smart, intelligent way to be able to give outputs that are not based on me thinking what you should do, but actually what is actually happening in the sectors. As we come to move this forward, the tool will become more advanced, the more data it's got, the more advanced it gets. Firstly, if I can ask for the DCP, right, what would you like to see for that? And then finally, what would you like the self-assessment tool, not just in the application electrification, but what would you like to see happen to it?
So DCP, the large suite of tools and the process, I think we're constantly improving how that works and giving more and more data. And I think we're on a good trajectory for that. The thing that I'm most excited about is tighter integration with development opportunities. So, we have mentioned earlier Frontier Tech, which is a method we use to develop those tailored courses. Things that are specific for the needs of a person or a department or what have you. I really want to get to tighter integration between those, so that rather than it being something that you do an analysis, you get some outputs and some recommendations or tailored courses, but to actually make it a sort of longer term thing, so that an organisation can use this, provide the courses, essentially sort of takes on the role of the VLE, but has that data in the background, so you can use it almost as a continuous process rather than as these sort of stepping stones between we do one set of analysis, we make some actions, we take the next step, but to have that as a continuous process I think would be a really good move. In terms of the self-assessment tool, is really about how we link into other sources of information. So because we've developed the hub and we've developed the self-assessment tool, it was really easy for us to make sure that those two things sort of sit next to each other really well. We know what data we need on one side, we know what data we can provide on the other, so we can talk backwards and forwards. And I think I'd like to expand on those opportunities. So at the moment we're using a set of questions, say for the electrification set. It's quite broad, but we can actually start to build, and we are building much more specific packs for certain roles. And once we start doing that, it gives us really interesting opportunities to link into other areas. We've got the body of knowledge, which is something that gives a dictionary, if you like, of the technologies that go into electrification, the levels they sit at. We work against that in the self-assessment tool for the RS Hub. But there are other things out there that we can make use of as well. So, when people have much more narrow requirements, let's say in electrification, we sort of draw a sort of permeable line around, battery technology, storage, those kind of things. But there's no reason why we can't branch out, into those and have that same kind of integration. People building ontologies of their sectors, it's becoming a really big thing. And I think, getting really nerdy here, but having a more general purpose way to integrate with those kinds of things, I think, could be really exciting. For the hub specifically, it is about those packs of information. The tool's built in such a way that we don't have to redevelop it all the time to add new content. So we worked on the first pack. That was released earlier this month, actually. That's
been released now. Yep. So that's available in the market.
It is. In February, we're going to have more packs available. So those will be far more specific. And we're working with people in the sector. So we're working with people at universities, people in industry, about the kind of skills and topics that they need, what they see, so that individuals then can benefit from their understanding. So you have these leaders in the sector. You've got academics that are looking at the research, what's coming down the line in terms of technology. You've got people that are applying it in new ways already, out in the real world. That understanding is getting encoded into those packs. So when you get to those really exciting cutting edge cases, you can go in and see how you sit against that. Like what kind of opportunities are there for me if I've got those skills, or how do I build up the skills to really sort of do something in that interesting area.
And that's what it's about, right? So in the end, right, it's about giving a tool to the people and businesses to be able to really dig deep into how you really get the right workforce for what you need to achieve your goals. So thank you, right, James, for, sharing that with us today. And I guess it's such exciting work that you're doing, right? And so clever in every single way that it's quite inspirational that, we're doing this on such a national scale and trying to support it. And I think that if anything, if you wanted to leave one message, for employers out there, right, who want to engage with this, what would it be?
Well, it's really simple. It's get in touch. It's something that is really, really flexible already. But because we built it, we know it inside out. We've got lots and lots of ideas. There are so many applications for this. The self-assessment tool we intended to be, open, free to use, for people on the outside, but it can be customized. It can do some really interesting things. So whether it's the larger DCP, people are interested in that, come and have a chat with us about it. But the self-assessment tool itself as well. There are loads of people out there that are sitting absolutely critical components of the supply chain in electrification. That so much knowledge in one organisation, sometimes only in a half a dozen people. Those people should be talking to us about how we get that knowledge and help people to pick up those skills as well. So that they've got the workforce for the future. That knowledge isn't almost risky. Because if they leave the sector, something goes wrong. It's a huge thing. So I think talk to us is probably the message.
Brilliant, excellent. Thank you, James. I think it's I love what we're doing, and I think that we will continue to do so. And I look forward to what impact we can have and continue to have. Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you for joining me on this electrifying episode of Switching On Electrified Skills podcast. Together, we'll shape a future that is powered by electricity. If you would like to learn more about electrification and explore courses and jobs, please visit ershub.co.uk or connect with us via social media channels. Thank you once again for joining me today. Until next time, keep charging ahead and unleash the full potential of your electrifying skills.